hardware wallets are the most secure way of storing it. But I guess people are still nervous about just having that degree of control, like there being no fallback.
Most people will lose money in crypto.
Controversial.
That is controversial.
Controversial. I mean, it is an uncomfortable truth that is the case for a lot of crypto.
A lot. I would say the vast majority of it, I would say.
Altcoins are centralized and therefore should not be invested in. I think this is the problem that a lot of people have. If you're talking about investment, well, do you want to be right or do you want to make money?
Obviously, always the risk with centralized exchanges. Idealism doesn't pay the bills, baby. Bitcoin isn't the future of crypto. The digital gold will always be there forever and a day. Other cryptos will come and go. It just keeps on growing and growing.
I kind of agree with that.
It will eventually be accepted and change our lives completely. And then it will somehow be controlled by the ultra-rich and ruin our lives.
Yeah. Well,
it's true. I think so. I think Ethereum is still far better than all the other cryptos out there, even if some people don't understand why. I don't agree with that.
I think we'll get rid of that. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to More Coin Bureau. Now, you reap what you sow, as the saying goes. About a week ago, we asked on Twitter for your unpopular crypto opinions, and now our chickens have come home to roost.
We have got a lot.
Yeah, because you do have.
Everyone's got an unpopular opinion.
Everyone's got an opinion, and a lot of them are very unpopular. So we have, our team have picked out a few for us to go through today, and we're just going to give our reactions to some of them.
This could be a bit of a landmine. It could be standing on some landmines, so we have to be careful.
Yeah, I should say that we haven't actually seen these yet. These have been specially picked out, so we're seeing them for the first time. I'm not going to lie, Nick. I feel slightly apprehensive.
I'm very apprehensive. Yeah. Well, okay.
Well, you can go first then.
Okay, here goes, guys. Memecoins will come back.
That's not so. I kind of agree with that.
Well, I mean,
I don't think all meme coins will come back.
Not all meme coins. I think meme coins will always be here. Look at some of the OG meme coins, Dogecoin, SHIB, all these. In terms of the meme coin frenzy we've seen, will that come back in terms of the same way? I don't think so. Same thing like NFTs have always been there. They're still cool NFTs, but the NFT frenzy from 2021, that isn't back.
Okay. Well, okay. I mean, I still think that's right. Meme coins, they won't, or they won't die.
This is from account, by the way, Meme Streets.
Oh, okay.
Meme
okay. Well, you would say that, wouldn't you? Meme Streets.
Yeah.
All right. This next one comes from Bulky. Governments will print paper money and eventually buy all the BTC. It will become totally centralized and unavailable to us peasants.
I don't agree with that.
No?
Well, who's going to, first of all, like Bitcoin Max or Bitcoin holders are going to want to accept the fiat, what's been given government. The moment government prints that, right, it's going to lead to inflation, right? And most Bitcoin Max is kind of like most Bitcoin holders hold Bitcoin because they know inflation is, devaluing the value of the US dollar every single year. So they'll rather want to hodl their Bitcoin. They'll never be able to hold all of the Bitcoin. So they're just debasing fiat.
Yeah, I disagree with the all bit, but I can foresee a scenario where governments certainly buy a lot of BTC or try to get their hands on it. But I guess part of BTC's value is its decentralization, not just in technical terms, but also in distribution terms. Like if all the BTC was owned by governments and, Michael Saylor, then its value proposition would decrease. Like a lot of that value comes from the fact that various, many people hold it.
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah. Okay. Well, that was a well thought out opinion, but unpopular.
Yeah. This is from Freezy Dry Chief. Crypto has no attributes that make it interesting for real life use case other than stable coins and privacy coins.
Controversial.
That is controversial.
Controversial. I mean, it is an uncomfortable truth that is the case for a lot of crypto.
A lot. I would say the vast majority of it, I would say.
Yeah.
Definitely the case that stable coins is one of the best use cases right now as we can see for crypto that's been adopted. We just passed and top, what's the total stablecoin market now? It must be in the hundreds of billions.
Hundreds of billions, yeah.
And it just keeps on growing and growing, and especially now with legislation around stablecoins in the US. So stablecoins for sure. And then privacy coins, well, I win the use case is, for keeping, obviously privacy coins are important from a use case perspective to obviously completely private cash, but their adoption has been severely limited because they can't be listed on exchanges. There's strictures there. So it will limit their mass adoption.
Well, stablecoins have got to run on something, haven't they? So, that gives a use case for the L1s that stablecoins run on. Again, there are far too many L1s, so you don't need all of them. But I think there is definitely call for infrastructure. And as the crypto ecosystem grows and becomes more widespread and more people use it, then I think some of the use cases of other cryptos that go beyond stablecoin, or Bitcoin for that matter, the store of value, I think that will become more apparent. But it's definitely an uncomfortable truth that the vast majority of crypto tokens,
governance tokens aren't useful.
No one. I think that's one thing we've definitively learned, isn't it? People don't care about governance.
No, I can't.
Or it can be easily manipulated.
Yeah, exactly. It's not the most enticing thing. I can't wait to vote in the next governance proposal.
I really want to have a say in the DeFi protocol that I'm chasing an 80% yield on. Yeah. Mr. Woe says hardware wallets will never go mainstream. There are some quite good unpopular opinions here, because I think there is a case for that as well. Because I guess what you could argue is that do people want to have another device? I think this is the problem that a lot of people have, in that they see it as another thing. People are kind of wary about holding their own wealth because they're so accustomed to trusting banks to do it for them, trusting other entities to do it for them. And of course, then you add in, hardware wallets are the most secure way of storing it. But I guess people are still nervous about just having that degree of control, like there being no fallback.
That's true. I think there's two competing points here. One is the ease and use and the UX and experience of using a hardware wallet, right? The one that any sort of hardware wallet that can make it as easy and as efficient as setting up an account at an exchange, right? And one that has fallbacks and securities that would allow you to get your coins back if you were to lose, your seed words or whatever. So I don't know if there are hardware wallets like that right now. Probably, maybe in the future there will be, which will make it a lot easier for retail to get used to using a hardware wallet. Yeah. But part of the reason now retail is not keen to use a hardware wallet is because maybe they don't really appreciate the importance of self-custody as much as they should, which is why we should continue to speak the truth to that, and why self-custody is important. But also because the user experience of using a centralized exchange is now a lot easier, simple. You just got an account, and to be fair, it is quite secure. There's obviously always the risk with centralized exchanges, but right now, Coinbase custody custodies the funds from BlackRock, and that technology is used to hold your coins. So for most retail, I think, to be honest, I would rather say there's more risk of me losing my seed words of me with the hardware wallet than Coinbase losing it. But it's those two competing forces. So I can't definitively say that, but I can understand where they're coming from. Yeah.
I guess the operative word here is mainstream. And what does mainstream mean? Does that mean a certain percentage of people worldwide using them? I mean, there's already a lot of use of them. It's certainly increased over the years, but there's a way to go. I guess a lot of it comes down to functionality as well. Yeah. Like how much, is there other stuff that you can do with your hardware wallet? For instance, like new ledger devices now, you can also use as a sort of secure sign-in.
Security key,
security key, like a bit like a pass key. So I guess if we see more functionality like that, that would help.
This is from Shero, and saying Bitcoin isn't the future of crypto.
Well, as many Bitcoiners will say, there's Bitcoin and there's crypto. So maybe Bitcoin isn't the future of crypto.
Exactly.
Bitcoin is the future of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the future of money.
Bitcoin's the future. The digital gold will always be there forever and a day. Other cryptos will come and go. And, right now you can't really build anything on Bitcoin, although that could change at some point with Bitcoin layer 2s. Yeah, I think it's a fair point. They're two separate ecosystems, I think.
It doesn't necessarily need to be.
Yeah.
Bitcoin, many would argue, and I'd be inclined to agree that Bitcoin is kind of fine as it is.
Yeah, it's established its use case, right? Yeah. And it's broken through.
Yeah. The next one comes from Harvey. It's better to build on Bitcoin and improve it than create a gazillion other tokens. That ties in quite nicely to the one we just talked about. Well, I guess the problem here is that, Bitcoin's been around for 16 years now. And I think even from the earliest days, people were interested in building on Bitcoin, were interested in seeing what the Bitcoin network could do, because they recognized just how powerful it potentially was. And, that's proven now. But I guess even early on, what was it? When did Ethereum come along? 2014. even in the early days, I mean, that was one of the reasons why Vitalik built Ethereum in the first place, because he wanted to build stuff on Bitcoin, but he found it too difficult. Obviously, like the small block size is a part of that. That was kind of definitively settled in 2017. Was it 2017 the block size wars?
Yes, they were 2017, late 2017.
So obviously now there are attempts to use, to leverage the network's security and to still build applications on top of it. But I think it's kind of telling that we're sort of still to break through on that front.
Yeah, because it is very difficult, because Bitcoin's protocol is a very, dumb protocol in the sense it doesn't have the smart contract functionality. Now, there are things being built on top of Bitcoin, a number of different Bitcoin layer 2s and solutions, and especially those ones that will allow for the settlement, the permissionless settlement on Bitcoin, the core protocol, rather than just using bridges or using trusted third parties or custodians or MPC technology. There's a few that are building out that. I mean, there's on the layer 2 side, we mentioned before, we invested in some of them as well. But I think that, it is one of these things that if we get a breakthrough in terms of the tech that allows for the settlement of purely on Bitcoin, right, without any sort of bridges and things and other trusted third parties, that will be like the golden key that would unlock Bitcoin's potential as a protocol that people can build on top of and allow it to be secured. And one of these also is Babylon, I think, for Bitcoin staking. They've managed to do this as well with permissionless Bitcoin staking, which is really a big breakthrough as well. So, I think it's true. We should continue building on Bitcoins, should continue improving it, and eventually we will have that golden key unlocked.
Yeah. It's a good point. Like, we certainly don't need a gazillion other tokens. Yeah. Maybe a question people should ask, crypto developers should be asking in the future is, can I do this on Bitcoin? Does it really need a new L1?
Yeah, exactly.
For instance. Yeah, good take.
This is from Derek.
Derek.
And he is saying, he's got a cool beard there, isn't it?
Wow, that's a big ass. That is massive.
Yeah, massive, man. Most people will lose money in crypto.
Yeah. Well,
it's true. I think so, because most will chase. It depends what they're chasing. If most people had been chasing meme coins in this cycle, they lost money.
Yeah. It isn't unpopular. That's probably the most unpopular opinion. But especially if you take a short-term view, I think it's the short-termers that get wrecked the most. So, good call, Derek. G. This person is just G. Or their handle is @G², but G. Cycles do not exist anymore.
I assume he's referring to the 4-year cycle. I tend to agree with him, and we've talked about this ad nauseum from the perspective of the 4-year cycle being driven by the halving, right? And the question whether the halving itself actually led to the Bitcoin price rallies because of the concept of halving blocks and inflation, or it happened to happen at a time when you had macro cycles as well. It coincided with macro cycles. And also now the question of, we just had a recent halving about close to nearly 12 months ago, that hasn't really had that much of an impact out yet, mainly been driven because now most of the interest has been driven by ETF inflows and that kind of stuff. So questions around whether the market structure has changed completely such that the concept of the halving has no impact at all. So I tend to agree with that.
I kind of feel as well, the more people have become aware of the cyclical nature of crypto, or the more that people do become aware of that, the less likely it is to stand up, because how long can that last if everyone knows about it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we have to see how the rest of this cycle plays out.
Yeah,
but I think the cycle narrative seems to be breaking down.
Yeah, I guess the question is, was he talking more broadly? Because macro cycles will always be there. Liquidity is one of the biggest factors that drive Bitcoin and crypto's price, right? Or Bitcoin more specifically. It's highly correlated with the global liquidity flows. So liquidity flows will always ebb and flow. And that drives a lot of the cycles. And there's cycles in stock markets that have gone back eons as well. But the actual halving-driven Bitcoin crypto cycle thing, I think, is coming to an end.
Yeah, interesting times. What's the next unpopular opinion?
From Random Lad. And Random Lad says, 99% of crypto projects are just VC exit liquidity disguised as innovation.
Yes, I agree.
Not
an unpopular opinion, Random Lad.
It's not unpopular, yeah.
I guess it's, it's
kind of unpopular. Would you say 99% though? That is a pretty high.
That is, that is.
I would say 90%.
Yeah.
90%.
It's that 9% that makes all the difference.
That's where you're going to make your money, boys. That's what you need to bet on, the 9% that isn't shit vaporware.
Yeah. Too many crypto projects are vaporware. Yeah. Very true. Luca.sol. Now this is interesting. Bitcoin maximalism is overrated. It's a legend, but the multi-chain future outshines it. Now, that is from someone with a .sol.
.sol, yeah.
But, Bitcoin maximalism can go too far, I think. But at times like this, when so many altcoin projects are underperforming, you do sort of feel that like the Bitcoin maxis have a point to a large extent.
If you had a majority Bitcoin portfolio or even an all Bitcoin portfolio, you've outperformed a lot of the altcoin holders over the past few months. It is a very simplistic ideal, like, I'm just going to be a Bitcoin maxi, I'm not going to invest in anything else. And you're not opening your mind to other projects and other technologies. But
you're making your life easier.
You're making your life easier.
Yeah.
Because, do you want to decide tell me the difference between these 15 different layer ones versus I'm just hodling Bitcoin. I believe in Bitcoin. It's easy to hodl just one crypto. It's there for the future.
Yeah, but it comes back to that question we were talking about earlier, doesn't it? In terms of what gets built on Bitcoin. Because I think, if you can't do everything on top of Bitcoin, then a multi-chain future is the answer.
Yeah.
But again, it will be. We don't need 90% of them.
Yeah. J Vic One Love World Peace. Is this a crypto coin? FOG. 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 Maybe it's a venture capitalists should have never gotten involved.
I guess you can make an argument either way. Like VCs have definitely, like VC pump and dumps, for instance, the whole, high FDV, low float meta. That has been value extractive for VCs. But then maybe the unpopular opinion is, or should be, some VCs have brought in capital, have added value. But of course, there's different levels of VCs, I guess.
Yeah, and there's different tiers for sure. This is actually something I mentioned or discussed with Hasib on an interview on More Coin Bureau, which we'll link to down below as well. I asked him this question more specifically around the backlash against VCs. And you don't realize that a lot of the VCs take a lot of risk, right, on these early stage projects with no promise, right? They take in a risk on these projects before there's a token, before there's a business, before there's actual product market fit, before there's actually even a piece of a line of code. They go and take a risk on a pitch deck, and they invest in these projects and allow them to innovate from that. It's not just in the crypto space, but also in fintech in general or in technology, right? A lot of it has been because VCs have taken a punt on a project that was just an idea from nothing and turned into some of the biggest tech juggernauts in the world. So it's obviously there are really bad VCs in crypto that do engage in such actions, nefarious activity. But there's also really good ones as well.
Yeah, I kind of agree with the sentiment. I just don't think you can paint it in such black and white tones.
Yeah.
There's shades of grey here. Zach Colbert TCJ says, we still think in our little native crypto bubble far too much. Average users don't care about decentralization or scaling. They just want cool apps that are easy to use and make their life a little simpler. That is not an unpopular opinion. That is based.
That's so true.
I agree with that. That is a based opinion. Zach Colbert, TCJ, you misunderstood the exercise. We are asking for unpopular opinions, not based ones. It's 100% true.
Yeah. Any sort of technology that abstracts away complexity for products in the crypto space will succeed. I think that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what will bring crypto mainstream, when people don't realize or don't have to engage with the fact that there's crypto underpinning it. They just want cool stuff that works. I could not agree more.
Bag-O-Rama. It will eventually be accepted and change our lives completely. And then it will somehow be controlled by the ultra-rich and ruin our lives.
Okay, this is crypto.
I assume he's talking about crypto.
That's a very bleak view to take. I mean, I guess the point of crypto, to a large extent, is to not make that possible. Again, it's about self-sovereignty. It's about control over your assets. If you're the sort of person who's willing to sell their coins to, it's the government.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's your entire choice whether you want to come back to the question we asked at the beginning. It's around governments printing money to go and buy the Bitcoin. It's like it's one of the things in your life which you have full control over is your cryptocurrency, right? As long as you control it in the self-custody. Back to the point around self-custody in your own crypto, in a hardware wallet or whatever, you have full control over that. Your assets and your money in a bank account, no, not really. Technically, the government can always seize that. The government can seize your house. The government can do everything. They can even if they want to make your identity, your personal identity, it's basically a database, right? Your passport, all that kind of stuff. But your Bitcoin, your crypto, as long as you store it on a hardware wallet or a self-hosted wallet, that's yours, and no one's going to force you to hand it to them.
Yeah, good point. Okay, Tarek says, altcoins are centralized and therefore should not be invested in. Tarek, Bitcoin Maxi, perhaps?
Yeah, probably is.
A lot of them are.
A lot of them are. A lot of them are for
Most
sure.
of them are.
Especially when it comes from validator sets in terms of coin supply. Although Bitcoin is becoming more centralized as well. Like, let's be frank. I mean, in terms of miner centralization, in terms of coins, Saylor holds 500,000. He holds more than almost 3% of the Bitcoin supply. And that's even more when you think about active supply. I mean, obviously, when a project launches as an altcoin project, you're going to start off with, and you're going to have to bootstrap your validator set. When you start off with, you'll start off as a centralized project, and then you'll try and expand out, try and get more validators. But obviously, in the capsule of time, obviously, I think that altcoins can become decentralized.
Yeah. Look, if we're talking because I only say this because, therefore should not be invested in. If you're talking about investment, well, do you want to be right or do you want to make money? So, yes, most are, but some of them will make you money.
Idealism doesn't pay the bills, baby.
That's true.
There we go.
That's true. I don't want to say it, but it may be the fact that this cycle is over.
No, I don't agree with that.
No.
Altcoin season, Bitcoin's cycle not over. I don't think we're in a bear market. No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, the cycle still has some surprises left for us.
Crypto would be much worse off without market makers.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's the market makers are kind of similar to VCs in a sense. There are good ones and bad ones, but you kind of, you need market makers for liquidity.
Otherwise, you'll never be able to bootstrap the liquidity out. Your altcoins wouldn't be able to trade. You wouldn't be able to buy them easily. But yeah, obviously we need to get rid of these scammy, shitty market makers. I mean, there's so many stories about them. And I think that's incumbent upon us to basically call them out. There was this news yesterday about this one. Did you see that news about
movement?
Yeah, one that was on Binance was just dumping their tokens and everything. They should have called it out and they should be hauled in front of a jury.
This is something I think that regulations will go. And this is one of the reasons why so many voices in the industry are calling for regulation, because at the moment it is kind of a Wild West, and you do have an environment where you have dodgy VCs and dodgy market makers, as well as good VCs and good market makers, but everyone's able to operate together. And until regulations come and make it harder for those bad actors to operate, that's what it's going to be like, unfortunately. Physicals.eth says USA creating a crypto reserve is actually bad for the space. Yes, I kind of agree. I kind of go with Nick. Well, again, like, is this a Bitcoin reserve or is it a crypto reserve? I mean, I guess this digital asset stockpile that it's now become. I mean, put it like this: I don't really see the point of the digital asset stockpile. I can kind of see the point of a strategic Bitcoin reserve, although I don't really think it's necessary.
Well, what is the point? I'm playing devil's advocate. What is the point?
So as the USA does have a big position in this valuable commodity. I mean, because remember, Bitcoin is a commodity. I guess what's difficult is the strategic part of it, as others have pointed, as the likes of Nick Carter have pointed out. Like, where does the strategic bit come in? Like, are you going to deploy Bitcoin into the market? Is it going to back the dollar to any extent? And so I don't think that is the case. I think from an investment point of view, it will probably serve the US well in the long term, certainly if it holds on to the Bitcoin that it already has, because so far it's lost out on a lot of money by jeeting Bitcoin into the market at lower prices. So I think there's a financial incentive, there's an investment incentive for it, but I don't see what the strategic value is.
Yeah, that's true. From the US government's perspective, yes, potentially holding it in the long term and not cheating their bags. But then again, it comes back to the question we've been asking prior to this as well: centralization, right? So, if it's only governments that are holding all the Bitcoin, how does it now become like a permissionless network if all these governments are holding large stacks of the coins, right? So the biggest holders are, the US government, Saylor, and who else, right? So it's a difficult one. It's obviously good for us.
Well, yeah, I would love it if more individuals across the world held Bitcoin. That is the metric I always sort of keep an eye out of. It's actually higher than you think. I think at the moment, the last figures I saw suggested that around 70% of the BTC supply in circulation, which, let's face it, is most of it, or that which hasn't, either been mined or been lost, 70% is thought to be in the hands of individuals.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, those individuals might be might be Michael Saylor. But still, I think that distribution, if that increases, then that makes Bitcoin more valuable in the long run.
100%.
Okay, I think I've reached the end of mine. Have you reached the end of yours?
Mine, and there you go.
All right.
Well,
Well, so those were some unpopular opinions. Some of them I think
were actually reasonable. Yeah,
I think most of them were very reasonable.
Yeah, but we should maybe we should put another tweet out in a few weeks' time. And if you guys want to see more of these unpopular opinions, or indeed us reacting to your comments on our tweets, then let us know down below.
Yeah, please keep those opinions, popular or unpopular or otherwise, coming in. And hey, maybe we'll cover yours on one of these videos before too long.
Maybe we'll give our opinion on the peer-reviewed research cryptocurrency.
Maybe. All right. Thanks everyone for watching. See you again soon.